Hi friends, today we're doing Unit 4, Lesson 10, Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, and the Roman Empire. We're going to start by going over the key vocabulary words you'll be hearing in today's reading. Our first word is illustrious, which means famous and well-known. Our next word is influence, the power to change how people think or act. Our next word is parched, which means extremely dry. Our next word is predecessor, someone who comes before. And our last word is vast, which means very big in size. We are now going to move into today's reading, which you can find in your small reader. Chapter 14, Augustus Caesar and the Roman Empire. During his life, Julius Caesar had a few close friends, the closest of which was Mark Antony. Mark Antony was a general under Julius Caesar and helped in the conquering of Gaul. Julius Caesar did not have any sons that could take over his position as Emperor of Rome. In his will, Julius Caesar adopted his 18-year-old great-nephew, Octavian, as his own son. After Caesar's death, Mark Antony and Octavian worked together to fight against Julius Caesar's enemies and resolve some of the conflict in the empire, at least for a while. Mark Antony took it upon himself to make sure Rome and Egypt continued to be allies because Rome needed to keep importing Egypt's wheat. Plus, Cleopatra's Egypt was a rich and powerful country with a strong army, not as powerful as Rome, but still an important force in the Mediterranean area with which to have an alliance. Just as Julius Caesar had done, Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra, and she fell in love with him. In fact, they became one of the most famous couples in history. William Shakespeare, the playwright you heard about earlier, who wrote the play Julius Caesar, wrote a play about this couple titled Antony and Cleopatra. Mark Antony and Cleopatra became allies in a struggle for power with Octavian. Even though Mark Antony and Octavian had worked together in an alliance to end Rome's civil war, they eventually became enemies. Octavian won the war against Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He went on to become the most powerful Roman leader at the time, with influence over most of the senators and generals. Octavian served as consul, proconsul, and in a number of other important roles, becoming a true Roman war hero, just like his predecessor Julius Caesar. Octavian managed to make more friends than enemies, unlike Julius Caesar. He was so popular and powerful that the Senate gave him a new name, Augustus, which in Latin means illustrious one. Augustus Caesar was presented the same award as his predecessor for his bravery, the civic crown. Today, Augustus is remembered as Emperor Augustus Caesar. He took the name Caesar in honor of Julius Caesar, his predecessor and adoptive father. Augustus Caesar was considered the first Roman emperor, which means he had a lot of power and influence over Roman politics. Under his leadership, Rome was no longer called the Roman Republic. Instead, from the time of Emperor Augustus Caesar onward, it will be called the Roman Empire. Whether he was called a consul, dictator, king, or emperor did not matter. The fact was that Augustus Caesar was the most powerful man in Rome. Many soldiers and generals throughout most of Rome's provinces were loyal to Augustus Caesar. They respected him and would do anything for him. This alone gave Augustus Caesar great power. He was also incredibly rich, and he had the power to make other people incredibly rich if they would do what he wanted them to do. Under the Roman Empire, the basic structure of government was similar to the structure of the Roman Republic. There was a Senate with 2 consuls, as well as proconsuls, or governors, and many of the same laws. The emperor of the Roman Empire was most powerful. During his first several years as emperor, Augustus Caesar worked to make Rome's borders and provinces secure and safe from attack. The Roman Empire was huge, stretching over thousands of miles, including large cities, vast forests, mighty mountains, and parched deserts. The land of Gaul had been conquered, but there were still tribes in the deep forest determined to fight the Romans that called them barbarians. To the north of Gaul, there were countless other Germanic tribes that were angry and nervous that Rome would try to take their land next. In the Alps, just north of Italy, there were still many ancient tribes unwilling to submit to Roman rule. There were also enemies in Spain and throughout various parts of Africa and Western Asia. Individually, none of these enemies were a real threat to the Roman power, but altogether they posed a real problem. It seemed as though the wars and fighting would never end. Augustus Caesar wanted to put an end to the continuous warfare once and for all. He spent more than 20 years fighting these enemies of Rome and expanded Roman territory to reduce the amount of surrounding threats. Thus began an important 200-year period in Roman history known as the Pax Romana, which means Roman peace in Latin. In truth, things weren't entirely peaceful. Roman armies still had to do some fighting here and there, but there were no serious threats to Roman power. Augustus Caesar preferred to win wars without fighting at all, and many enemies surrendered to Roman rule rather than face Roman legions in battle. The mere thought of fighting the Romans was enough to make kings shudder with fear. Wherever they conquered, the Romans built their roads, bridges, temples, aqueducts, and fortresses. Wherever they went, the Romans also brought their language, laws, money, and arts. Augustus Caesar loved art, and he knew how important it was to all Romans. He paid artists to create some of the finest and most beautiful sculptures, mosaics, frescoes, and temples. There are fewer frescoes today because they have not held up as well as mosaics and sculptures over time. Frescoes and other art from ancient Rome show us that Romans were talented artists. Ancient Roman art provides important clues about daily Roman life. Augustus Caesar convinced Romans that peace was better than war. This idea was difficult for many Romans to accept at first, because they were used to constant warfare and expansion as the way to sustain the Roman Empire. Roman boys were expected to join the army as adults, and when necessary, die in battle for Rome. Roman mothers, wives, and children expected their sons, husbands, and fathers to march away to wars, often never to return. The idea of Pax Romana was something most Romans had never dreamed of. Over the next hundreds of years, the Roman Empire had many, many emperors, but none would ever be as powerful or as illustrious as Augustus Caesar. You may now move on to Unit 4, Lesson 10, Google Form.